How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi, host of Tier Talk, and I want to go into a little more of the conversation I had last week with retired Major Louis Soto. We were talking about punitive segregation and how it's needed, because it is needed, but how we're defending it is wrong. Basically, if we want to have these tools in play, we have to be prepared to defend against any argument that can come our way, and if need be, make the changes that are needed to these issues that we need to defend. So in this case here, we were talking about punitive segregation, and we have to remind the public that punitive segregation isn't just about safety and security. There also is an effort to rehabilitate. And I think that's where we have to kind of start leaning our argument towards if we are to ever defend the tools that we need, that we know increase our chance of running a safe and secured facility. So when I get back from our sponsors, I want to talk about the process of an inmate who is going through restrictive housing, if you will. So an inmate that gets in trouble, who now has to find their way to navigate themselves out of restrictive housing. So again, they put themselves in there, and the onus is on them to get out. That's the key. And I think the public, once they start to understand the practice and what we're trying to implement here, they will be more accepting of what it is that we're trying to do. And then also, it's the term solitary confinement, punitive segregation. I mean, that's not, first of all, solitary confinement is not what it is anymore. We all know that. And punitive segregation is one aspect of segregation. Because yes, there has to be some form of punitive consequence. There has to be. But even when there is that form of punitive consequence, there is still an effort to rehabilitate. And it's that argument there that's going to help us defend the tools that we need. So when I come back from our sponsors, we're going to talk about the level process and what's offered in these RHU, these restrictive houses. And again, that's when inmates have made some bad choices, and now we're doing what we can, you know, as long as they're willing to correct those choices, like some form of corrective action. But again, that's only if the inmate is willing to correct themselves. If they're not willing to correct themselves, then it is solely going to be punitive segregation. It just is what it is. When I come back from our sponsors, we'll discuss it a little more. And guys, if you haven't, remember the show's for you, the brave men and women who work behind the wall in the criminal justice system. So if you haven't, please, guys, subscribe to the channel, interact, engage, and hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. I stand by for our sponsors.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Being a corrections officer takes its toll on even the strongest individuals. The constant need to perform at the highest level, putting your life at risk in a hostile environment, and the mental scarring of traumatic experiences. 31% of corrections officers show symptoms of PTSD, and 66% of people with PTSD also suffer with a substance abuse problem. The Transformations First Responders program is specially designed to help veterans and officers heal from the grips of addiction and PTSD in a comfortable, supportive, and serene setting. You are not alone. If you have questions about the services we offer, give us a call at 866-762-8454 to get more information on this affordable and life-changing program.
Thank you guys for listening to our sponsors. I'm going to keep this brief, but this may be a little complicated, so I need you guys to bear with me on this one, because the thought here is not as I wish it was just really simple to explain, but it's not. The punitive aspect of segregation is what we're always constantly defending, you know? And the problem is when we lose those arguments, people are removing the general practice of segregation. So that deals with the preventive and reactionary measures that segregation is used for. So here we are pigeonholing ourselves to the one aspect of segregation, the punitive side of things, but they're removing segregation out generally. So you guys understand that, right? So here we are defending one aspect, but they're taking away the whole thing. It's sort of like a play on words, but look how slick they've become. We're focused on one element of segregation, and they're taking that one element to kind of generalize the definition of what segregation is for. And this is kind of the conversation I had with retired Major Louis Soto about the importance of constructing our argument towards the rehabilitative side of things, the corrective action, if you will. Because that's what's going to help us keep the tools that we need to maintain a safe and secure facility, because we're going to have what's needed to defend our position. Guys, we know what the argument is already. We know what the argument is against segregation. But what the public has done, or what these political figures have done, is they've limited our argument to punitive. And we know for a fact that's not the only purpose segregation serves. So it's like having a test in front of us. We know what's going to be asked on the test. It's right in front of us. So we have to prepare ourselves to answer these questions. And guys, those uninformed questions, we can easily answer those. But we have to make sure that we make the changes that are needed, and that we look at the bigger picture, because they're playing us a little bit. They're removing segregation based on one aspect. And that shows you how uninformed they are. So again, when we defend our position, we have to defend it from segregation in general to remind people, hey, you're only talking about one aspect of segregation. You're totally eliminating the preventive measure, which is what's making us frustrated. Sure, segregation has a reactionary measure, we know that, but you're eliminating the preventive measure, and that's what's starting to piss us off. So when we gear our argument for segregation, an effort to keep segregation, we have to also prepare our argument for the rehabilitative side, the fact that we're looking to correct people's actions for ultimate release, but still putting the onus on the inmate who is back there looking to be released. You know, you're talking about release either from the administrative segregation or the restrictive housing, which is what I prefer. I prefer that term, restrictive housing, back to general population, or ultimately, and this kind of sucks, but it does happen, inmates from those areas, from restrictive housing, ag seg, to the public. So we have to remind them that, hey, even though you believe that this is strictly punitive, it's not. There is going to be an effort once that inmate is in that area to correct their behavior. And that correction can come in multiple programs that are offered through multiple departments: social services, mental health, religion, education. It's there. It's actually there more aggressively. But again, we can't beg people to want to take these programs. The onus has to be on them, because the change has to be internal. And how we kind of motivate them to want to change is by taking stuff away and then having them earn it back. That is the humane way of gaining control. So even if you have a restrictive housing unit and they get in trouble, the moment they go into that area, they start, let's say, at a level 1. You know, because I was reading practices from different states. Some have 2 levels, some have 4 levels, but they start off at a level 1. That level 1 is the most restricted. You're good, you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're hitting up those programs, keeping yourself busy and productive. Then after some time, whatever that be, 30, 60 days, I don't know the length of, every individual stay, but you have to kind of make that relative. They get the next level. They get to level 2. And they get less restrictions. But see, the key thing about this is that they're earning their way. And we've already proved before in a conversation I had on this topic before, we are more motivated by a loss than a gain. Once we have something, we've been accustomed to it, we don't want that taken away. So we use that to our advantage. You messed up, you lose everything. Now you got to start from scratch and earn it back. And trust me, guys, when they're earning stuff, they don't want to lose it. That's their motivation. That's what's going to help them go through the levels and ultimately find their way out. But again, if they make bad choices while they're in there, then you lose your levels. And you go right back to step one. I don't care what level you're on. You could be on that final level, whether that's a level 2, which obviously the next step would be a level 1, or in some facilities they have 4 levels. You mess up, you go back down to the first level. This is corrective action, but it's corrective action that's going to be aggressive. You know, so again, it's the fact that you're motivated by a loss over a gain. We don't have to give you things that you've never earned to make you do the right thing. We're going to take away the stuff that you've earned. So I'm not going to make promises on the what if. I'm just going to take away what you already have. And that's going to motivate, hopefully, the behavior that's needed for the inmate to eventually step their way down through the process. So again, I'm just kind of adding into our conversation that I had with retired Major Louis Soto. I thought it was a great conversation. But when we go to voice our opinions about the tools that we need to also look at the rehabilitative side to defend what we need. And guys, we can do it. We know what we're doing behind that wall. We know our jobs. So when someone goes to challenge us thinking that they're creating this unique perspective, that's when we come right back and zing them. Because that's where you're wrong, and this is what we are doing. But again, we have to prepare for all sides of the argument. That's why we're losing. We're losing because we're only concerned about the one aspect. And it's funny because that's what the politicians, that's what they're pushing. They're pushing the one aspect of segregation, but then eliminating the whole thing. So wait a second, hold on. If you're going to eliminate the whole thing, then we got to go back to the drawing board and tell them, hey, listen, you're eliminating the preventive measures of segregation, of how we maintain a safe and secure facility. So you're taking one aspect and using that aspect to eliminate a practice that's messing with our safety and our ability to run a safe and secure facility. So what are your arguments? Your arguments are this? Okay, fine. Now we go back, we revamp, and we come back and say, now give me those arguments again. Because here's what we're doing. But guys, again, it's about justifying our position or our tools by the arguments against us. Because we can do it. We can do it. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. Please, guys, if you haven't, the show's for you brave men and women who work behind the wall. So please subscribe, interact, engage, and hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. As always, guys, stay safe.